Brent Caldwell lifted the old letter in front of 300 people and smiled like he had just saved the family name. "She signed it," he said. That was her truth before she needed a new one. Every head in the ballroom turned toward me, and for one cold second, I was 18 again. My name is Mara Caldwell, though for nearly 2 decades, I tried to live as if the last name belonged to somebody else. At 36, I had a small apartment in Portland, Oregon, with rain-streaked windows and a desk that faced the line of maple trees. I designed brands for nonprofit organizations, community libraries, food banks, after-school programs, small foundations with big hearts and tired budgets. My job was to help decent people tell the truth well. That was the irony, I suppose. People in Portland knew me as calm, careful, almost painfully precise. Clients trusted me because I had a way of finding the sentence they were afraid to say. Before I designed a logo or wrote a campaign line, I always asked the same question. What is the hardest truth your story has to survive? Most people thought that was just good strategy. It was not. It was survival. I grew up in Hawthorne Falls, Ohio, a postcard kind of town with a white church at the end of Main Street, American flags outside the hardware store, and a diner that smelled like coffee, bacon grease, and apple pie before noon. My father, Howard Caldwell, owned Caldwell Home and Hearth, a chain of home goods stores that sold kitchenware, quilts, lamps, holiday wreaths, and the idea that a respectable family could be purchased one matching table runner at a time. My mother, Patricia, was the softer face of the same machine. She wore cream-colored coats, wrote thank you notes by hand, and said words like gratitude, service, legacy, and family values as if she had invented them. My older brother Brent was their chosen heir. I was their reliable daughter. There is a difference. Reliable meant I stayed late folding donor letters. Reliable meant I smiled at church luncheons. Reliable meant I fixed mistakes quietly, carried boxes without being asked, and never embarrassed the family in public. Reliable meant that when someone had to be sacrificed, everyone already knew where to look. For 18 years, I kept a gray envelope in the bottom drawer of my desk. It had traveled with me through 4 apartments, 2 bad winters, 1 flooded basement, and every version of myself I had tried to become. I rarely opened it. I did not need to. I knew what was inside. Emails, transfer records, access logs. A notarized statement from Ruth Donnelly, the former bookkeeper at Caldwell Home and Hearth. Proof that I had not done what my family let an entire town believe I had done. Proof that the letter I signed at 18 was not a confession. It was a bruise with ink on it. On a wet Tuesday morning in March, I was working on a campaign for a children's literacy nonprofit when my phone began buzzing across the desk. I ignored the first call, then the second. By the 6th, I looked down. Jenna Caldwell, my younger sister. We had not spoken in more than a year, and even then, it had been the kind of conversation people have when blood ties are still technically alive, but emotionally on life support. By the time I picked up the phone, there were 33 missed calls. Her voice came through broken and thin. "Mara?" I closed my laptop. "What happened?" She tried to breathe, failed, tried again. "I know," she whispered. "I know what they did to you." The room around me went still. Outside, rain tapped the glass in soft, steady lines. I said nothing. Jenna rushed on, terrified that silence meant I would hang up. "I found Ruth Donnelly's files. I found the letter. I found the notes about Brent. Mara, I'm sorry. I believed them. I believed Mom and Dad." There are apologies that arrive too late to comfort you, but not too late to matter. I stood up slowly, one hand on the edge of my desk. "Why were you looking through old files?" "I wasn't. Mom asked me to help with the Gala archive. The Caldwell Promise Fund is doing that big anniversary event next week. She wanted old photos, scholarship lists, family materials." Of course she did. Patricia Caldwell never wasted a memory if it could be polished and placed under a spotlight. Jenna's voice dropped lower. "They're using your name." A strange calm moved through me, the kind that comes before a storm, not after it. What do you mean? She sent a file while we were still on the phone. I opened it on my laptop. There I was at 17, standing in a navy graduation dress, holding a cheap bouquet from the grocery store. Under the photo, in elegant serif type, was a sentence that made my stomach turn hard. Mara Caldwell, former Caldwell Promise Fund beneficiary. Proof of the Caldwell family's lifelong commitment to education. I read it once, then again. I had never been a beneficiary of that fund. I had sorted its folders, designed its flyers, stuffed envelopes for its donors. And when Brent stole from it, I had been pushed in front of the lie like a human shield, but I had never received one dime from it. Mara, Jenna said, crying now, they're going to put this in the Gala program. I looked at the gray envelope in my drawer. For 18 years, I had mistaken distance for freedom. I had built a life far enough away that Howard's voice could not reach the walls. I had learned to sleep without waiting for Patricia's footsteps in the hallway. I had convinced myself that silence was not the same thing as surrender. Then my sister said the only sentence that could have brought me back. Noah broke a window at school last week. Dad told him to blame older boys. Mom said I was making him weak by asking him to tell the truth. Noah was Jenna's son, 11 years old, skinny, serious, with the Caldwell eyes and none of the Caldwell cruelty. I sat down again, but not because I was weak, because rage, when it becomes clear, needs somewhere to stand. Jenna whispered, I don't want him growing up in a family where lying means loyalty. I opened the bottom drawer and took out Ruth Donnelly's envelope. Some families call silence love. Some call obedience respect. Mine had called a lie a sacrifice and handed it to an 18-year-old girl like a family duty. I left Hawthorne Falls to survive. I was going back so a child would not have to. In the Caldwell house, nobody ever said Brent was more important than me. They did not have to. It was in the way my father lowered his voice when Brent walked into the room, as if a future CEO deserved quieter air. It was in the way my mother laughed off his mistakes before anyone had time to name them. It was in the way every broken thing in that house somehow became an accident when Brent touched it, and a lesson in responsibility when I did. Howard Caldwell believed in order. His shoes were lined by color in the mudroom. His shirts were pressed even on Saturdays. He read the business section at breakfast and expected silence until his second cup of coffee. When he spoke, he did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His disappointment could fill a room faster than shouting. To the people of Hawthorne Falls, he was Mr. Caldwell, the man who remembered names, shook hands firmly, and donated just enough money to every local cause to make refusal impossible. At home, he was Dad. But that word always felt like a title we had to earn every morning. My mother, Patricia, was different. She made warmth look effortless. She smelled like vanilla lotion and expensive hairspray. She knew what casserole to bring a grieving widow, what hymn to request at a church luncheon, what shade of lipstick looked humble in photographs. She could put one hand over her heart and say, "Family is the first place we learn grace," while ignoring the child standing beside her, waiting to be defended. Brent was 2 years older than me, handsome in a careless way that adults forgave before he apologized. If he forgot to mow the lawn, he had been busy. If he dented Dad's truck, boys learned by doing. If his grades dipped, the teachers were not challenging him properly. He has leadership instincts, Dad would say. Leadership? In our house? Meant Brent could make a mess and someone else would be trained to clean around him. Jenna came 8 years after me, a late blessing, Mom called her. She was all round cheeks, ribbons, and questions. By the time Jenna was old enough to understand anything, the family story had already been written. Dad was wise, Mom was kind, Brent was promising, I was difficult, though that word came later. At first, I was useful. By 15, I knew the back office of Caldwell Home and Hearth better than some employees. I could load printer paper without jamming the machine. I could alphabetize donor lists, update mailing labels, fold gala programs with clean corners, and carry boxes of ceramic mugs from the stockroom without breaking one. Mom called me her reliable one. She said it at church, at fundraisers, at store openings. She would touch my shoulder and smile at other women as if she had raised a daughter made of common sense and good manners. Mara is my reliable one. People heard praise. I heard assignment. Reliable meant I could miss a Friday night movie because Mom needed help preparing thank you letters. Reliable meant I could stay behind after church to stack chairs while Brent drove off with friends. Reliable meant when Jenna cried, I was expected to calm her. When Brent snapped, I was expected not to provoke him. When Dad came home in a mood, I was expected to read the weather in his face and adjust the whole house around it. No one asked if I was tired. Dependable children do not get tired. They get handed another box. The strangest part is that I was proud of it for a while. A child will turn almost anything into love if she has to. I thought being needed meant being cherished. I thought if I proved myself steady enough, careful enough, quiet enough, my parents would one day look at me the way they looked at Brent, with expectation instead of convenience. Then came the little lessons. When Brent took $20 from Mom's purse for gas and forgot to mention it, Dad said, he should have asked, but he's learning. When I used $8 from my own birthday money to buy art markers without telling Mom first, she said, secrets are not a good look on you, Mara. When Brent talked over me at dinner, Mom smiled and said, let your brother finish. He's excited. When I corrected him about a date on a scholarship flyer, Dad's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Nobody likes a girl who has to be right all the time. I remember staring at my mashed potatoes, feeling heat crawl up my neck. Brent smirked into his glass of sweet tea. Jenna, too young to understand, swung her feet under the chair. That was how the rules worked. Brent's confidence was potential. Mine was attitude. On Sundays, we sat in the third pew at First Methodist, dressed like a family from a bank calendar. Dad in navy, Mom in cream, Brent in a blazer he hated, Jenna with ribbons in her hair, me with my hands folded so tightly my knuckles went pale. After service, people would stop us near the fellowship hall and praise the Caldwell Promise Fund. They thanked Dad for his generosity, Mom for her heart, Brent for stepping into such a fine legacy. Then they looked at me and said, and Mara, helping behind the scenes, I'm sure. Behind the scenes. That was my place long before anyone needed a scapegoat. I learned to watch faces. I learned when Mom's smile tightened, when Dad's jaw shifted, when Brent's charm became panic. I knew which silences were peaceful and which ones meant trouble was looking for a body to land on. By the time I was 18, I had become exactly what they raised me to be. Useful, quiet, close enough to blame, and still young enough to believe that if my family needed me, I must matter. The Caldwell Promise Fund began in 1997 with a photograph in the local paper. Dad stood on the steps of First Methodist with a brass shovel. Mom stood beside him in pearls and a navy dress. The headline called them a family investing in working-class students. I was 7, too young to understand a board of directors, but old enough to notice what happened afterward. Teachers smiled wider. Bankers called Dad back faster. Pastors said our name with warmth. At Millie's Diner, waitresses brought Mom lemon water before she asked. The fund paid for tuition, trade school tools, textbooks, and gas cards. I would never pretend it did no good. It did. That was what made it dangerous. A lie around something ugly is easy to hate. A lie around something useful makes decent people hesitate. On paper, the fund looked proper. Helen Whitcomb, a retired principal, served as board chair. Calvin Brooks reviewed reports. Dad was founder. Mom handled public relations. Brent became operations liaison once he could wear a suit without looking trapped. Those titles sounded clean. At home, they meant something else. Dad chose donors for lunches. Mom chose which student stories were inspiring enough. Brent learned where important hands were shaken. I sat with banker boxes and labels, making the machine look organized. Every October, the Grand Hotel ballroom filled with white tablecloths, roasted chicken, iced tea, and apple pie. Little cards carried words like hope and promise. Mom loved the microphone. She would stand under the chandelier and say, "In this family, service is not an event. It is a way of life." People applauded because they wanted to believe her. So did I. For years, I believed the fund was the clean room in our house, where Dad's control became leadership and Mom's performance became kindness. I watched students cry when they received checks. Those moments were real. That was the cruel part. As I got older, I noticed little edits. A boy who wanted to become an auto mechanic became a young man determined to rebuild his family's future. A girl who needed books became a shining example of perseverance, though Mom forgot her name without a card. Dad preferred useful donors. Brent treated the gala like a rehearsal for inheritance. If a student's story did not photograph well, Mom moved it lower. I once asked why we could not just tell people the truth plainly. Mom looked at me over envelopes and smiled. "Truth needs presentation, Mara. Otherwise, people walk past it." I carried that sentence for years. Later, I would build a career proving the opposite. Truth does not need perfume. It needs a clean table and enough courage to sit there. Still, I helped. I printed name tags. I fixed Brent's slideshow. I corrected addresses. I learned gratitude before I learned how to name my own anger. By 2008, the Caldwell Promise Fund was not just a charity. It was armor. It protected our stores, our church pew, our invitations, our last name. Then $54,900 moved through an account it should never have touched. And for the first time, I saw what my family would do to keep the armor shining. Ruth Donnelly found the missing money on a Wednesday afternoon. She did not find it because she was suspicious. Ruth was not a dramatic woman. She wore gray cardigans, kept peppermint candies in her desk, and corrected people with the gentle sorrow of someone who wished the numbers had behaved better. She had been reviewing vendor payments for the Caldwell Promise Fund when she noticed $54,900 had gone to a company she did not recognize. The name sounded harmless enough. Lakeview Community Services. Clean, forgettable, almost boring. But Ruth had worked around charities long enough to know that boring names could hide ugly rooms. By Friday morning, she had traced the payment through 2 accounts and found where the money had really gone. Brent. Not directly, of course. Brent was careless, not stupid. The money had circled through a vendor invoice, then into a personal debt tied to a sports betting pool, and a failed investment with 2 men from Columbus who wore expensive watches and never seemed to have jobs. Ruth went to Dad first. That was her mistake. She believed Howard Caldwell would protect the fund. I still wonder how long it took her to realize he was only protecting the family name. That evening, Mom called me downstairs just after 7. I was in my room packing art supplies into a suitcase, counting the days until Chicago. I had a partial scholarship, a summer of library wages, and the fragile belief that if I worked hard enough, distance could turn into a future. "Mara," Mom called. "Your father needs you in the dining room." Not wants, needs. The table was already set, but nobody was eating. Dad sat at the head, still in his white dress shirt from work. Mom sat to his right, eyes red but makeup perfect. Brent leaned back in the chair across from her, pale around the mouth, one knee bouncing under the table. A single sheet of paper lay in front of my place. I did not sit. Dad tapped the table once. "Sit down." I looked at Brent. He looked away. That was when I knew. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled it back before she touched me. "What is this?" Dad slid the paper toward me. A statement. I read the first line and felt my face go numb. It said that while assisting with clerical work for the Caldwell Promise Fund, I had mishandled transfer paperwork, causing a temporary accounting error. Temporary. Clerical. Error. 3 soft words wrapped around a theft. I didn't do this, I said. No one is saying you stole anything, Mom whispered quickly. That sentence is supposed to comfort me? Dad's eyes sharpened. Do not take that tone. I looked at Brent again. Say something. His jaw moved once. Nothing came out. Dad folded his hands. Brent made a poor decision with some people he should never have trusted. A poor decision? I almost laughed. He used scholarship money. Mom flinched as if I had slapped her. Keep your voice down. For who? The students he stole from? Dad stood then, slow and heavy. The money will be restored. Quietly. No student will be harmed. Then why do you need my name on this? Because I already knew. I wanted one of them to be honest enough to say it. Dad did. Brent carries this business forward. His future is tied to more than himself. I stared at him. And mine isn't? Mom began crying then, real tears, but not for me. Mara, sweetheart, you're leaving. You have your school, your art, your whole life waiting. This is one hard thing we are asking you to carry so the family does not fall apart. I remember the chandelier humming above us. I remember the smell of roast chicken cooling on the sideboard. I remember Brent's hands clenched so hard his knuckles looked white, while he let me become the answer to his shame. I don't even have authority to approve transfers, I said. Dad's voice dropped. No one will ask that if we handle this properly. Properly. That was a Caldwell word for burying something deep enough. Mom pushed a pen toward me. We will help with your first semester, I promise. Once things settle, we will explain everything. Nobody is trying to hurt you. A strange thing happens when the people who raised you ask you to betray yourself. Part of you still waits for love to interrupt them. It did not. I signed because I was 18, because I needed tuition, because I thought sacrifice created debt and one day my family would repay it with truth. The pen scratched my name across the page. Brent exhaled. That was the sound I never forgave. For 3 days after I signed that letter, the house treated me like a healing wound nobody wanted to look at. Mom made pancakes on Saturday morning and asked if I wanted blueberries in mine. Dad read the paper and spoke to Brent about inventory shipments. Jenna colored at the kitchen table, humming to herself. Too young to understand that the air around us had changed. Nobody mentioned the letter. That was how the Caldwells handled damage. They covered it with normal. I waited for Dad to call me into his office and say the tuition transfer was ready. I waited for Mom to sit on my bed and tell me she was sorry. I waited for Brent to knock on my door and say, I should have stopped them. Waiting can make a fool out of a daughter. 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave for Chicago, Dad asked me to meet him at the store. He did not bring me into the front office. He took me to the stockroom, between boxes of fall wreaths and discounted casserole dishes. That alone told me the truth. He put one hand in his pocket. Your mother and I have looked at the numbers. I stared at him. We cannot cover your first semester right now. I heard a metal cart squeak somewhere behind us. An employee laughed near the loading dock. The world kept moving, careless and bright. You promised. Dad's expression tightened, not with guilt, but irritation. Circumstances changed. No, you changed them. His eyes hardened. Do not confuse sacrifice with entitlement. That sentence stayed with me longer than it deserved to. When I got home, Mom was folding laundry in the den. She had already prepared her face, soft eyes, sorry mouth, hands busy enough to avoid mine. Your father told me, she said. You told me you would help. We intended to. You told me no one would hurt me. She placed the towel in the basket. Mata, you're making this sound crueler than it is. I remember blinking at her, almost impressed. Crueler than it is, as if cruelty became smaller when spoken gently. By Sunday, people at church were looking at me differently. Not openly. Hawthorne Falls had better manners than that. They did it in glances that moved away too quickly. Mrs. Whitcomb touched my shoulder and said, "College will be good for you. A fresh start can be a blessing." A fresh start. Mr. Hayes from the bank asked if I was still helping with paperwork at the fund, then looked embarrassed before I answered. At the fellowship table, I heard two women lower their voices. Such a shame. Those scholarship checks were delayed. Patricia is handling it with such grace. I stood there holding a paper cup of lemonade while my name moved through the room without me. Mom did not defend me. She did worse. When Mrs. Larkin hugged her near the coat rack and whispered something I could not hear, Mom sighed and said, "We're trying to forgive her." Forgive her, not protect her, not tell the truth, not stop the rot before it reached my name. Forgive her. That was the moment I understood my family had not only asked me to carry Brent's mistake, they had decided I should look grateful under the weight. Brent avoided me after that. If I entered the kitchen, he left. If I walked into the store, he found a supplier to call. Once, I caught him watching me from the hallway, his face pale and strange. For half a second, I thought he might speak. Then Dad called his name, and Brent turned away like obedience was easier than decency. Jenna asked me one night why Mom was sad. I was packing thrift store clothes into a suitcase, trying to decide which art supplies I could sell and which ones I could not bear to lose. "She's worried," I said. "Did you do something bad?" I looked at my little sister sitting cross-legged on my floor, clutching a stuffed rabbit by one ear. The truth rose in my throat. Then I swallowed it. "No," I said, "but sometimes grown-ups make things hard to understand." She nodded solemnly, as if that explained the whole world. The afternoon before I left Hawthorne Falls, Ruth Donnelly found me behind Caldwell Home and Hearth. I was sitting on the curb near the employee parking lot, pretending not to cry. Ruth did not ask permission. She sat beside me, knees stiff, purse hugged to her chest. "I should have gone to the board first," she said. I wiped my face fast. It wouldn't have mattered. It might have. Neither of us believed that completely. She opened her purse and pulled out a gray envelope, thick enough to bend in the middle. My name was written on the front in blue ink. "I made copies," she said. "Emails, transfer records, access permissions, my statement. You had no authority to create a vendor or approve that payment." My hands shook when I took it. "Why are you giving me this?" Ruth looked toward the back wall of the store, where the Caldwell sign cast a long shadow over the pavement. "Because one day they may try to make their lie useful again." I could not speak. She touched my wrist, careful and brief. "Do not use this to become cruel, Mara. Use it when you need to become free." The next morning, I left Ohio with one suitcase, $612 in my checking account, and a gray envelope tucked inside a sketchbook. Behind me, my family kept their name. I kept the proof. Portland did not welcome me. It rained the day I arrived. Not the pretty kind of rain people put in movies, but cold, needling rain that slipped under my collar and soaked the cuffs of my jeans while I waited for a bus with one suitcase and a backpack full of sketchbooks. I had never been that far from Ohio. I had also never felt safer. Safety, I learned, did not always feel warm. Sometimes it felt like standing alone in a strange city and knowing nobody there had already decided who you were. For the first month, I slept on the sofa of a girl I knew from an online art forum. Her name was Tessa. She lived with 2 roommates, 3 cats, and a kitchen sink that never seemed empty. I kept my suitcase zipped under the coffee table and woke before everyone else so I could fold the blanket and make myself disappear politely. Old habits travel well. I worked wherever someone would pay me. Coffee shop mornings, copy center afternoons, weekend shifts helping a florist wrap wedding centerpieces I could not afford to smell for too long. At night, I designed flyers for basement bands, church bake sales, and one very serious dog walking business called Positive Steps. I charged too little because I was afraid people would leave. Then I charged too little because I needed them not to. There were days I ate ramen straight from the pot. There were nights I sat in the stairwell because the apartment was too crowded and I needed one corner of the world where no one expected me to be useful. I thought about calling home more than I like to admit, not because I missed them cleanly. Nothing about missing a family like mine is clean. I missed the idea that maybe, if I sounded tired enough, Mom would remember she had once brushed my hair before school. I missed the fantasy that Dad might say, "Come home, we handled it wrong." But every time I reached for the phone, I heard his voice in the stockroom. Do not confuse sacrifice with entitlement. So I put the phone down. The gray envelope stayed inside an old portfolio case beneath my bed. I did not open it often. I did not need to punish myself with proof. Just knowing it existed kept me from believing the version of me they had sold to Hawthorne Falls. Slowly, my life became less temporary. I enrolled in night classes at a community college. I learned software on library computers. I found a shared studio with bad heating and good light. My first real nonprofit client was a neighborhood literacy center that needed a logo, a brochure, and a way to ask donors for money without sounding desperate. The director, Mrs. Alvarez, apologized for their small budget. I almost laughed. Small money, honestly offered, felt larger than any Caldwell promise. I asked her what the hardest truth of her organization was. She blinked. That we cannot save every child who walks through our door. Then we do not pretend you can, I said. We tell people what you can do and why that still matters. She hired me before the coffee got cold. That became my work. Food banks, libraries, shelters, arts programs, scholarship groups that actually knew the names of the students they helped. I built websites and donor packets and campaign language. I learned that good people did not need to sound perfect. They needed to sound responsible. By 36, I had a small apartment with rain on the windows, a narrow desk, steady clients, and friends who did not ask me to bleed to prove I belonged. It was not glamorous. It was mine. Some mornings, I would stand with coffee in my hand and watch Portland blur silver outside the glass. And I would feel something close to peace. Not forgiveness. Peace. Forgiveness still sounded too much like something Patricia would ask for before admitting what she had done. I was not healed in the way people mean when they want a pretty ending. I was functional, careful, kind when I chose to be, hard where I had to be. I had built a life no one in Hawthorne Falls could lock me out of. That should have been enough. Then, one Tuesday morning, my phone began to shake across my desk. Jenna Caldwell. Again. 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 33 missed calls later, the past found my number. Jenna did not begin with an apology. People think apologies are the first sign of truth. They are not. Panic usually gets there sooner. "Mara, please don't hang up," she said. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Not younger, smaller. Like someone had folded her life into a shape she could barely carry. "I'm listening," I said. For a few seconds, all I heard was her breathing and the faint noise of traffic behind her. She was outside somewhere. In Hawthorne Falls, people stepped outside to make calls they did not want family to hear. "It started with Noah," she said. That made me sit straighter. Noah was 11, her only child, a serious boy with soft brown hair and a habit of apologizing to furniture when he bumped into it. I had met him only twice. Jenna sent Christmas photos sometimes, the kind with matching sweaters and smiles too stiff to trust. What happened to Noah? He broke a window at school. I waited. It was after dismissal. He and two boys were tossing a basketball near the gym doors. He threw too hard, it hit the metal frame, bounced into the glass. It cracked all the way down. That sounds like an accident. It was. Her voice shook. The school said I could pay for the repair in installments. Noah was scared, but he wanted to tell the principal himself. I knew before she said the rest. Jenna swallowed hard. Dad told him not to. I closed my eyes. He said accidents follow boys around if they let people put their names on them. He told Noah to say some 8th graders were roughhousing there earlier. Mom said I was making him weak by forcing him to confess to every little thing. The rain outside my window had turned heavier, blurring Portland into gray glass. "And what did you say?" I asked. Jenna did not answer right away. That pause told me more than the words. At first, nothing. I just stood there. Dad was talking like he knew best. Mom kept saying, "Jenna, honey, don't make life harder than it has to be." And Noah was looking at me. Her voice cracked on his name. He asked me later if telling the truth meant Grandpa would be disappointed in him. I pressed my hand against the desk. There it was. Not a broken window, not a repair bill, not a child's mistake. A family tradition. Jenna whispered. I heard myself tell him we would think about it, and I hated myself. I sounded like them. I did not comfort her. Not yet. Comfort given too quickly can become another way of burying the truth. What changed? I asked. Mom asked me to help with the Gala archive. The Caldwell Promise Fund? Yes, the anniversary event is next week. She wanted old photos, scholarship lists, newspaper clippings, anything that made the family look. Jenna gave a bitter little laugh. Historic. That sounded like Patricia. She never walked past a memory without checking whether it could be framed. She gave me the storage room key at the fund office, Jenna said. I wasn't snooping. I swear to God, Mara, I wasn't trying to dig up anything. I believe you. The words surprised both of us. She breathed out. There were labeled boxes, gala programs, donor thank you notes, old board minutes. Then I found one with Ruth Donnelly's name on it. I remembered her, barely. Mom used to say she left because she became difficult. Difficult. In my family, that word meant a person had stopped being convenient. I opened it because I thought it might have photos or accounting records for the display. There was a copy of the statement you signed. I almost put it back. But you didn't. No. Her voice became thin again. Because underneath, it was Ruth's memo. It said you had no authorization to create vendors, no approval access, no banking credentials. It said the transaction path pointed to Brent. For 18 years, Jenna had lived inside a story built by people she trusted. I could hear the walls falling around her. I kept reading, she said. There were emails, notes, copies of transfers, and then newer documents about Oakline strategy. Payments from the fund, vendor descriptions that didn't make sense. Oakline, a name I had never heard before, but the shape of it felt familiar. Clean enough to pass a quick glance, empty enough to hide behind. Did you take the files? No, I scanned some with my phone. I put everything back exactly where I found it. Good. Even scared, Jenna had been careful. Then she said the thing that truly brought me back. Mara, I believe them about you. I thought you made a mistake and left because you were ashamed. But when Dad told Noah to lie, I saw it. I saw how easy it was for them, like they had done it before. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. They had. Jenna began crying then. Not loudly. Quiet crying is worse sometimes. It sounds like someone trying not to take up space. I'm sorry, she said. I am so sorry. I looked at the gray envelope across the room, still half hidden in the drawer I had not closed. You were 8 years old, I said. They handed you a story and called it family. And now? I stood and walked to the window. Below, cars moved through the wet street, headlights smeared gold in the rain. Now, you decide what story Noah gets. Jenna went silent. For the first time since she called, I heard something in her breathing change. Fear was still there, but something else had stepped beside it. Maybe shame, maybe courage, maybe the beginning of both. Jenna sent the gala program while we were still on the phone. Gold border, white background. A photograph of the Grand Hotel ballroom. My mother's taste was everywhere. Polished, expensive, and emotionally dishonest. Then I saw myself. 17 years old, navy graduation dress, cheap flowers in my hands. Under the photo was one sentence. Mara Caldwell, former Caldwell Promise Fund beneficiary. Proof of our family's lifelong commitment to education. For a moment, I was not angry. I was cold. They can't write that, Jenna whispered. They already did. I had never received the scholarship from that fund. I had sorted its files, designed its posters, carried its boxes, and lost my name protecting the son who treated it like a private wallet. Now donors would clap for my photograph as if the Caldwells had lifted me up, not stepped on my back. Patricia had always known how to use pain once it stopped bleeding in public. I opened the bottom drawer and took out Ruth Donnelly's gray envelope. The paper had yellowed, but the facts had not aged. Access records, transfer notes, Ruth's statement, proof that I had no authority to create a vendor or approve a payment. Portland rain tapped the window while I scanned each page, saved copies to a secure drive, and uploaded backups. I emailed nothing yet. Rage wanted speed. Survival had taught me patience. I don't want to destroy them, Jenna said. That's not what this is. Then what is it? I looked at her name blowing on my phone. For years, I had thought of Jenna as part of the house I escaped. Now she was a mother standing between her son and the lesson that had ruined me. It's stopping them before Noah learns that love means lying on command. If you are listening to Mara's story, please leave a like and tell us in the comments what advice you would give her now. Should she enter Hawthorne Falls quietly or expose the Caldwell lie in front of everyone? What hides behind Oakline strategy will make the whole family regret underestimating her? After the call, I booked the Thursday flight to Columbus. Columbus gave me space to meet a lawyer before entering Hawthorne Falls. I reserved a rental car and a hotel room near Main Street, not inside my parents' house. Then I called Tessa. I'm going back to Ohio, I said. Send me your flight details, she said, and copies of whatever you're carrying. I'm not starting a war. No. You're refusing to walk into one empty-handed. Tessa knew families are not always separated by distance, but by evidence. I packed lightly. Ruth's envelope went into my carry-on inside a plain folder marked Client Drafts. At midnight, I looked back at the life I had built without them. The narrow desk, the chipped blue mug, the quiet room no Caldwell could lock me out of. I had once left Hawthorne Falls with $612 and a lie tied around my throat. I was returning with proof, a locked suitcase, and no need for their permission. At 5:38 the next morning, as my rideshare waited downstairs, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown Ohio number. Go home before you embarrass your mother. I read it once. Then I deleted it, picked up my bag, and locked the door behind me. I landed in Columbus after lunch, picked up a rental car, and drove east with Ruth Donnelly's envelope on the passenger seat. Then Main Street appeared. Millie's Diner still had its red awning. First Methodist still stood on the corner like a witness that had seen everything and testified to nothing. Caldwell Home and Hearth had newer windows, but the sign was the same dark green. Serving families since 1989. Some sentences should be forced to answer questions under oath. I did not drive to my parents' house. I checked into a hotel near the highway, where the clerk called me ma'am without recognizing my last name. That felt like mercy. Jenna came 20 minutes later, holding a canvas tote against her chest. Her eyes looked like they had not trusted sleep in days. Hi, Mara, she said. Not sis, just my name. Hi, Jenna. Her mouth trembled. I don't know if I'm allowed to hug you. Not yet, I said. She nodded. We sat by the window and she unloaded the tote. Screenshots, copied emails, the Gala program, and a spreadsheet marked Oakline Strategy, LLC. I didn't take original, she said. I scanned what I could and put everything back. Good. She flinched, then understood I meant it. She pointed to the spreadsheet. These payments started 2 years ago. Small at first, then bigger around Gala season. I read the invoice descriptions. Donor messaging consultation. Community engagement package. Legacy campaign support. Expensive emptiness. Who approved them? Brent marked them reviewed. Dad signed off on some larger ones. Mom was copied on the donor language. And the board? Helen Whitcomb saw summaries. Calvin Brooks asked a question last fall, and Brent answered him directly. A newer pattern, cleaner paper, same family instinct. I opened Ruth's old envelope beside Jenna's files. 18 years sat between the two stacks, but the handwriting felt related. Jenna watched my hands. I believed them, she said. You told me. I need to say it with you in the room. She swallowed. I let Mom make you the warning story. The selfish daughter, the ashamed daughter. I repeated pieces of it. I was a child when it started, she said. I'm not a child now. That was the first useful sentence she had given me. No, I said. You're Noah's mother. My phone buzzed. Patricia, sweetheart, we heard you're in town. Come home. We should talk as a family. No apology, no question. A summons dressed in lace. Years ago, that message might have pulled me into the chair where I signed away my name. This time, I typed one sentence. I'm staying at the hotel. No love, no mom. Jenna breathed out like she had been waiting to see whether I would walk back into the cage. That evening, I called Marcus Reed. A client in Portland had given me his number. He does not do drama. He does records. Marcus listened as I explained the old letter, the Gala program, Oakline, and the anniversary event days away. When I finished, he said, Miss Caldwell, the old wound may be history. The new payments are not. Since landing, fear made room for something colder. A plan. Marcus Reed's office sat above a dental clinic in Columbus. No marble, no law books, just a table, a coffee machine, and a man in a suit who read every page before deciding what to say. He had tired eyes and the calm voice of someone who had watched rich people mistake panic for innocence. He spread the documents into 3 stacks. 1, he said, tapping Ruth Donnelly's file, the 2008 incident. His finger moved to the Gala program. 2, misleading donor materials. Then he touched the Oakline invoices. 3, vendor payments with possible conflict issues. Jenna sat beside me, hands locked in her lap. Official words frightened her. Marcus looked at me. The statement you signed is ugly. It matters. But if you want a courtroom victory 18 years later, the answer is no. Jenna's face fell. Mine did not. But it can show pattern, Marcus said. And it can weaken Brent's story if he waves that letter around. He has a copy. Well, then we assume he will use it. He pulled Ruth's access memo closer. You had no authority to create a vendor, approve disbursement, or access the treasurer function. The letter describes a mistake you were not able to make. For 18 years, I had known that. Hearing it from a lawyer still cut deep. Oakline is different, he said. Those payments are recent. If the fund paid for services not provided, or if a related party connection was hidden from the board, that is a governance problem. Could it be criminal? Jenna asked. Maybe, maybe not. We do not lead with words we cannot prove. That was his first rule. Do not overstate. The second came right after. Do not post online. Do not call the newspaper. Do not confront your parents hoping they confess. Real life punishes messy people, even when they are right. They'll say I came back for money. Yes, Marcus said. So your paper trail asks for records, review, and correction, not payment to you. He drafted a preservation letter to Helen Whitcomb, the independent chair. It requested preservation of Oakline documents, vendor approvals, conflict disclosures, gala materials, and use of my name or image. Will that stop the gala? No, but altered records will look very bad. Plain, clean. That was when I trusted him. Marcus asked about Oakline's ownership. Jenna mentioned Brent's ex-wife, Elise Warner. I knew Patricia's divorce story. Lovely woman, poor fit, Brent tried everything. In Caldwell language, that meant the woman had stopped cooperating. If Miss Warner can confirm Oakline did little real work or that Brent controlled the account after the divorce, this becomes harder to dismiss as family bitterness. Family bitterness. That was what they would call it, not fraud. Not a man expecting women to absorb the blast. Marcus closed the folder. Miss Caldwell, truth is not a firework. It works best when placed under the right door. For the first time since my plane landed, I did not feel dragged by the past. I felt positioned. Marcus slid the preservation letter across the table. At the bottom, my name appeared not as a confession, not as a daughter begging to be believed. Mara Caldwell, requesting correction of the record. Millie's Diner had not changed enough to be kind. Same red boots, same chrome napkin holders, same smell of bacon, coffee, and cinnamon rolls under the heat lamp. On Sundays, after church, the Caldwell family used to sit in the corner booth while strangers praised Dad, Mom smiled, Brent ordered extra pancakes, and I pretended belonging was not something I had to earn. Brent chose that booth. Of course he did. He stood when I walked in, which almost made me laugh. My brother had always understood manners better than decency. Mara, he said. Brent. He looked older than the photographs Patricia sent out at Christmas. Still handsome, still polished, but thinner around the eyes. His jacket probably cost more than my first month of rent in Portland. His watch caught the light every time he moved his hand. Coffee? He asked. I'm not staying long. His smile tightened. You flew across the country, but you can't sit with your brother for 20 minutes? I flew across the country because Jenna called me crying. That removed the smile. We sat. The waitress came by, called him Mr. Caldwell, and gave me the quick, searching look people give when they know your face from a story they were not supposed to repeat. Brent waited until she left. Mom's under a lot of pressure, he said. Dad isn't young anymore. This gala matters to them. It matters to donors, too. It's a celebration. It's a fundraising event using false information. He leaned back. So that's the angle Marcus Reed gave you? I kept my face still, but inside, something shifted. Brent already knew about Marcus. You're keeping track. I'm protecting my family. No, I said. You're protecting the version of it that lets you stay clean. His jaw flexed once. There he was. Not the charming heir, not the tired son. The boy from the dining room, older now, but still waiting for someone else to carry the consequence. You don't know what you're doing, he said. You've been gone 18 years. You don't understand how many employees depend on Dad, how many students depend on the fund. I understand enough to know Oakline's strategy is not a student. His finger stopped near his coffee cup. A small thing, barely visible. But fear has a pulse, and I had spent my childhood learning to hear it. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a folder. Not thick, not new. He placed it on the table between us like an old trap reset with fresh bait. When he opened it, I saw my signature. 18 years vanished. The dining room, the cold chicken, Patricia crying for appearances, Dad saying Brent carried more than himself. The pen in my hand. Brent tapped the paper. You signed it. I know what I signed. No, Mara. You admitted responsibility. That makes it your truth. The words were rehearsed. Maybe by him, maybe by Howard, maybe by both of them in the back office while Patricia practiced grief in the mirror. I looked at the letter until it became only paper again. A signature made under fear is not a confession, I said. It's a bruise with ink on it. His eyes hardened. Try saying that to Hawthorne Falls. Try saying it to donors who remember scholarship checks being delayed. Try saying it to your clients when they learn you came home to blackmail your own family. There it was. Not a warning, a preview. You already contacted someone in Portland. He shrugged, but his mouth gave him away. People talk. Cowards usually do. They just prefer email. For the first time, Brent's polished mask cracked. You always thought you were better than us. No, I thought if I was good enough, you'd stop using me. He laughed under his breath. You're still dramatic. And you're still relieved when someone else pays. That hit. I saw it land. He gathered the papers, but I had already taken out my phone. I did not grab the letter. I did not raise my voice. I photographed the folder, the document edge, and his hand pulling it back. What are you doing? Building a record. His face changed again, quick and ugly. Be careful, little sister. I stood. That title expired when you let me sign your lie. I left cash on the table for coffee I had not touched. Outside, the Ohio air felt too bright, too clean for what had just happened. By the time I reached my rental-car, my phone had 3 missed calls from Portland. Then an email from my largest client appeared. Subject: urgent clarification needed. I sat behind the wheel and read the first line twice. We received a concerning message regarding allegations involving your family and possible financial pressure. Brent had not come to talk. He had come to show me the knife was already moving. Patricia came to my hotel that evening with a white bakery box tied in blue ribbon. Snickerdoodles. When I was 12, I loved them enough to burn my tongue eating them straight from the pan. Patricia remembered that. She remembered birthdays, favorite hymns, coat sizes, which neighbor liked lilies instead of roses. Memory had never been her problem. Truth was. She stood in the hallway wearing a cream coat and pearl earrings, looking more like a donor luncheon than a mother. Her eyes were wet before I opened the door all the way. Mara, she said softly, may I come in? No. The word surprised her. People said no to Patricia Caldwell politely. They did not usually make it final. She looked past me into the room. I brought your favorite cookies. I stopped being 12 a long time ago. Her hand tightened around the box. For a second, I saw anger under the hurt. Then it vanished behind the face she used in church basements. Sweetheart, I know you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm awake. That landed harder than I expected. She lowered her voice. Your father and Brent are worried you're letting outsiders turn a family matter into something cruel. Marcus Reed is not an outsider. He's a lawyer. That is exactly what I mean. She smiled sadly, as if I had confirmed a diagnosis. Lawyers do not understand blood. No, they understand signatures. And her eyes filled again. There had been a time when Patricia's tears could rearrange me. As a girl, I had believed my mother's sadness was a room I was responsible for cleaning. If she cried, I apologized. If she sighed, I softened. If she looked wounded, I forgot who had been cut first. Not that night. She set the bakery box on the hallway table between us. Brent was young. So was I. Your brother made a terrible mistake, and you made it mine. Her lips trembled. We were trying to save the family. I looked at her carefully then, not with rage. Rage would have made her feel important. I looked at her like evidence. Did you cry because I was hurt? I asked. Or because people might see who held the knife? Patricia's face changed. only for a breath. Then she whispered, "I am still your mother." I waited for those words to ache. They did, but not enough to obey. "Then you should have acted like one, Patricia." She flinched at her name like I had slapped her. Maybe I had. In our house, calling a parent by a first name was not disrespect. It was a boundary with its lights turned on. "You don't mean that." "I do." "You will regret speaking to me this way." "No," I said. "I regret all the years I didn't." I closed the door before she could turn tears into another weapon. The next morning, Howard called. Not Dad. Not anymore. "Mara, come to the store." It was not a request, but I went because fear grows in shadows. I wanted to see the shape of it. Caldwell Home and Hearth smelled the same. Cedar candles, cardboard boxes, polished wood, artificial cinnamon near the seasonal aisle. Employees lowered their eyes when I passed. Some recognized me. Some recognized only the last name and the trouble attached to it. Howard waited in his office behind the framed newspaper clippings. He did not offer coffee. He did not ask how I was. My father had always believed manners were for people he still needed to persuade. "You are embarrassing your mother," he said. "No, you're embarrassed she has something to answer for." His jaw moved once. Hawthorne Falls does not admire children who come home to shame aging parents. "I'm 36. You're acting like a bitter girl." There it was, the old reduction. Make the woman small, then call her unstable when she pushes back. I stayed standing. "Did you contact my client in Portland?" Howard leaned back in his chair. "People deserve context before trusting someone with their charitable image." That sounds like a yes. That sounds like the world, Mara. No, Howard. That sounds like you. For the first time, his expression sharpened into something close to hate. You are not as untouchable as you think. I never thought I was untouchable. That was Brent's problem. His hand struck the desk. Not loud enough to be called violence, just loud enough to remind me who had once ruled the room. Leave before the gala. No. Then do not complain when this follows you back to Oregon. I looked at the man who had taught a whole town to call control by better names. You already followed me there. My phone buzzed before he could answer. Jenna. I stepped into the hallway and picked up. Her voice was thin with panic. Mara, the principal called me in. He said there are concerns about my judgment. He mentioned Noah. He mentioned family instability. Behind me, Howard's office door stayed open. Of course it did. He wanted me to hear the lesson clearly. If I would not bend for my own fear, they would try Jenna's. Jenna was sitting in her car outside the elementary school when I found her. She had parked under a sycamore tree, hands still on the steering wheel, though the engine was off. Through the windshield, I saw children spilling out of the side doors with backpacks, lunchboxes, and the innocent noise of people too young to understand how adults can poison a hallway. I knocked gently on the passenger window. Jenna unlocked the door. He said he was concerned, she whispered before I sat down. Principal Adams, he kept using that word. Concerned about my judgment, concerned about stress at home, concerned that Noah might be caught in family instability. Did he say Howard called? No. She laughed once, dry and broken. People here don't have to say the name. They just carry it into the room. I looked at the school building, red brick, white trim, a flag snapping above the entrance. A place built to teach children courage, now being used to frighten their mother. What did you tell him? That Noah broke a window, told the truth, and I arranged payments with the office. She wiped her cheek fast, angry at the tear. Then I asked whether honesty had become a disciplinary concern. For the first time that day, I smiled. There she is. Jenna shook her head. Don't make me brave yet. I'm scared. Good. Brave people usually are. She looked at me then, really looked. Not as the oldest sister from a family myth, but as someone standing close enough to be believed. If I lose this job, Mara, I don't have Dad's money. I don't have Brent's confidence. I have rent, groceries, and a kid who needs braces. I know. You keep saying I can choose, but choices cost money. That was the honestest thing she had said. I wanted to promise her everything would be fine. I did not. False comfort was a Caldwell family heirloom, and I was done carrying it. Instead, I said, then we make sure what they're doing costs them more. By afternoon, Marcus had sent the preservation letter to Helen Whitcomb and copied Calvin Brooks. Formal. Clean. No accusations beyond what the document supported. Preserve vendor contracts. Preserve donor materials. Preserve internal emails. Preserve conflict disclosures. Preserve anything related to Oakline Strategy, LLC. Paper, properly aimed, can be louder than a scream. Helen replied within 2 hours. Received. The board will review. No warmth, no promise, but not silence. That mattered. The next name on our list was Elise Warner. Brent's ex-wife lived in Dayton, 2 hours away, in a brick duplex with a narrow porch and a wind chime shaped like copper leaves. She opened the door wearing jeans, a gray sweater, and the expression of a woman who had paid dearly for a trusting charm. You look like a Caldwell, she said. I tried not to. That almost made her smile. I told her I was not there to drag her into a family war. She folded her arms. Brent used to say that too, right before asking me to sign something. There it was. I did not push. I told her about the Gala program, Ruth's files, Oakline payments, and Jenna. Not everything. Enough. Elise listened without inviting me in. When I said Brent had used an old statement against me, her face changed. I know what it feels like, I said, to become somebody else's signature. The door opened wider. Inside, her kitchen smelled like black coffee and lemon cleaner. She pulled a folder from a drawer under a stack of takeout menus. Oakline was supposed to be a consulting show for one gala season, she said. Brent told me it was cleaner for billing. I was married. I was stupid enough to think paperwork was not a moral category. She showed me formation documents with her name on them, then bank statements from after the divorce. I thought it was dead, she said. Then small deposits kept appearing. I asked Brent, and he told me not to worry about money I wasn't earning. Did Oakline provide services to the fund? Elise gave me a tired look. Mara, Oakline was a mailbox, a laptop, and Brent's ego. She slid one printed email across the table, from Brent. It's cleaner if the money stays inside the family. I read it once, then looked up. Elise's voice hardened. I'll sign an affidavit, but I won't let him make me look crazy. Well, he already tried that with me. Then let's disappoint him. When I left Dayton, the sky had gone dark blue over the highway. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. This helps. A lot. For 18 years, Brent had survived because women carried the paper he handed them. Now the paper was learning to talk back. Brent came to Jenna's apartment at 8:17 that night. She remembered because Noah had just gone to brush his teeth and the timer was still beeping over a frozen lasagna. Her place was not the kind of room Brent usually entered. Beige carpet, a table with one uneven leg, a rent notice on the fridge. Clean, but tired in the way a home gets tired when every dollar has a job. Jenna opened the door because she thought it might be me. Brent stood there in a wool coat holding a leather folder. Can I come in? No. He looked past her shoulder. Don't make this ugly. It was ugly before you knocked. His face softened into the Caldwell expression men used when they wanted a woman to feel unreasonable for protecting herself. I'm here because you have a son, he said, and Mara doesn't. The sentence found the weak place impressed. Jenna led him into the kitchen, but she did not sit. Brent did. Men like him sit first when they want a room to belong to them. He opened the folder and placed 3 pages on the table. Private family agreement. Dad and Mom will start an education fund for Noah. $21,500. Jenna stared at the number. It was braces, school clothes, maybe community college. What do you want? Stop sending documents to Mara. Tell Helen the archive confusion was emotional. Encourage Mara to return to Oregon before she hurts people who help this town. So I lie. No, you de-escalate. Jenna almost laughed. De-escalate meant kneel quietly so the person holding the match could call himself peaceful. Brent leaned forward. You don't have the luxury of pride. You have a son. From the hallway came a small sound. Noah stood barefoot in pajama pants, toothbrush in his hand. Mom? Jenna turned. Honey, go back to the bathroom. He looked at Brent, then at the papers. Is Grandpa mad because I told the truth about the window? Nobody moved. Brent stood, all false warmth. Noah, buddy, grown-ups are just talking. Noah looked at his mother. If I tell the truth, will Grandpa stop loving me? Jenna told me the room changed then. She saw herself at 8, believing I left because I was bad. She saw me at 18, signing a lie while Brent stayed silent. She saw her son waiting for permission to become small. She picked up the agreement. Jenna, Brent warned. She tore it once, then again, then straight across the signature line. No. His face lost every trace of brotherhood. You are choosing Mara over your own child. Jenna stepped between him and the hallway. I'm choosing my child. That's why I'm done lying. Brent gathered the torn pages. You have no idea what Dad can do. For the first time, she said, I have a pretty good idea. After he left, Jenna locked the door and held Noah until his breathing slowed. Then she called me. Her voice trembled, but it did not break. I'm not running tomorrow. I looked at the sealed packet on my hotel desk. Ruth's records, Elisa's affidavit, Oakline invoices, and the program that had stolen my name. All right, I said. Then neither am I. The gala was no longer a celebration. It was where the Caldwell story would be forced to stand beside the truth. The Hawthorne Falls Grand Hotel had always known how to flatter a lie. Its ballroom was warm with chandelier light, white tablecloths, folded napkins, and centerpieces of blue hydrangeas arranged low enough that donors could still see one another smile. A string quartet played near the entrance. On the screen behind the stage, photographs from 29 years of Caldwell Promise Fund dinners dissolved into one another. Students holding checks, Patricia shaking hands, Howard cutting ribbons. Brent standing beside important men who always seemed to have a glass of iced tea and a reason to laugh. And then my photograph appeared. 17 years old, navy dress, grocery store flowers. A girl who still believed her family could not possibly betray her twice. Jenna touched my wrist under the table. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't look away, I said. We sat near the back, not hidden, not announced. Marcus Reed sat 2 tables over, calm as a closed briefcase. Elise Warner arrived late and chose a seat near the side aisle, her coat still on, as if she wanted the option to leave before courage changed its mind. At the front table, Patricia looked perfect. Cream suit, pearl earrings, soft smile. Howard moved from donor to donor with his hand extended before anyone could refuse it. Brent wore a dark suit and the relaxed confidence of a man standing on a floor other people had paid to keep level. The master of ceremonies was a local news anchor with silver hair and a voice made for weather warnings. For nearly 3 decades, he said, the Caldwell family has shown us that integrity is not just a word, it is a legacy. Applause rolled through the room. Jenna's fingers curled around her napkin. Helen Whitcomb stood near the podium, holding the Legacy of Integrity Award, a glass statue shaped like an open book. I remembered her from church, from scholarship nights, From the way she once told me a fresh start could be a blessing, while my name was being buried behind her smile. Marcus looked at me once. Not a signal, a reminder. Do not chase fire. Build a record. When Helen stepped toward the microphone, I stood. The room did not quiet at once. It thinned into silence, one table at a time. I walked forward with a sealed packet in both hands. My heels sounded too loud on the polished floor. Patricia's smile froze. Howard's chin lowered. Brent stopped clapping. I did not take the microphone. I did not raise my voice. I placed the packet on the table in front of Helen. Before you honor a legacy, I said, you should know whose silence paid for it. A murmur moved through the ballroom. Howard rose so fast his chair scraped the floor. This is a private family matter, he said, loud enough for everyone. My daughter has chosen a public event to settle a personal grievance. There it was, the oldest trick. Make truth look impolite. Brent stood beside him, smoother, colder. Mara has struggled with this for years. We've tried to handle it with compassion. Compassion. The word almost made me laugh. Then Brent opened his jacket and pulled out the old letter. My old letter. He held it up so the front tables could see my signature. Mara admitted responsibility in writing. He said she signed the statement herself. The ballroom shifted, not dramatically, worse, quietly. People leaned toward one another. Eyes found me, then left. A few older donors frowned with the relief of people being given permission to doubt the uncomfortable woman. For one breath, I was back in that dining room. Cold chicken, Patricia's tears, Brent exhaling when the pen left my hand. Then Marcus stood. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, that document is precisely why the package should be reviewed. His voice did not boom. It cut clean. The records inside include access logs and a notarized statement from Ruth Donnelly showing Miss Caldwell did not have authority to create vendors, approve transfers, or access treasurer functions. The statement Mr. Caldwell is holding describes an action she could not perform. Helen's face changed. Not shock, recognition. Marcus continued. The packet also contains recent vendor records involving Oakline Strategy, LLC, donor materials using Miss Caldwell's name inaccurately, and an affidavit from Miss Elise Warner. Every head turned toward Elise. She stood slowly, pale but steady. Oakline was not doing work worth those payments, she said. Brent told me it was cleaner if the money stayed inside the family. Brent's face went white around the mouth. Patricia whispered, Elise, please. Elise looked at her. You don't get to sound heartbroken now. Jenna rose last. Her voice shook at first, then found itself. I believed my sister was guilty because my parents taught me to. Last week, they told my son to lie about breaking a school window. Last night, Brent offered money for Noah's education if I kept quiet. And she laid the torn agreement on Helen's table. I will not raise my child inside another Caldwell lie. No one applauded. No one needed to. The silence had weight now, and for the first time in that room, it was not sitting on me. Helen looked down at the glass award in her hands. Then she set it on the table. This presentation is suspended, she said. The board will convene immediately and engage in an independent review. Howard stepped toward me, voice low. Do you understand what you've done? I met his eyes. Yes, I said. I stopped donating my name to your reputation. The next morning, Hawthorne Falls did not burn. That was never how truth worked in towns like ours. People still bought coffee at Millie's. First Methodist still rang its bell. Caldwell Home and Hearth still open at 9, with cedar candles near the entrance and spring wreaths stacked by the door. But something had shifted. For the first time in 18 years, whispers were not walking ahead of me. They were walking toward Howard, Patricia, and Brent. Within 24 hours, The Caldwell Promise Fund board suspended Brent from every financial role pending review. Helen Whitcomb's public statement was careful, dry, and impossible to soften. The board has paused all legacy recognition and engaged independent accounting counsel. No accusation, no drama. Just enough official language to make donors stop smiling. A week later, the local paper ran the headline on page 3. Legacy award paused amid questions over scholarship fund payments. Patricia hated page 3. Page 3 meant respectable people could pretend they had not seen it while reading every word twice. The review took 5 weeks. Marcus warned me not to expect movie justice. Real consequences arrived by calendar invite, certified mail, and board minutes. Oakline Strategy had received payments for services it could not properly document. Conflict disclosures were incomplete. Brent had continued influencing vendor decisions after claiming distance from the company. Howard had approved larger invoices without pushing them through full board review. Patricia's Gala program had used my image and biography in a donor-facing document that was false. No one used the word thief in public. They did not have to. Brent texted me once. "You didn't have to do it like that." I stared at the message in my hotel room, then typed back. "You didn't have to let me sign it." Then I blocked him. Howard tried a different door. He offered a private settlement through an attorney I had never heard of. Money, correction language, a joint statement calling the matter a painful family misunderstanding. I told Marcus to decline. I had not come back to sell them a softer ending. Caldwell Home and Hearth did not collapse. I did not want it to. Too many employees had families, mortgages, and Sunday grocery lists. But Howard had to sell 2 smaller locations to stabilize cash flow and restore disputed funds. He resigned from the chamber board to focus on family and business matters. That was Caldwell language for losing the room. Patricia lost her speaking slot at the First Methodist Women's Luncheon. For a woman who fed on graceful applause, that hurt more than money. She found me once behind the main store, near the same parking lot where Ruth Donnelly had handed me the gray envelope. "You look satisfied," she said. I look finished. Her eyes filled. "You made me lose everything." I thought about the girl I had been at 18, waiting for her mother to choose her. "No, Patricia," I said. "You lost what my silence paid for. What was truly yours is still yours, if you can find it." She cried then. I did not move toward her. Some tears are invitations back into the cage. Jenna moved out 2 weeks later. Her apartment was small, but Noah picked the blue curtains himself. He wrote a letter to the school apologizing for the broken window and offered to help clean the gym after basketball practice. The principal accepted it. So did Jenna. My sister and I did not become close overnight. Real healing is not a holiday commercial. Some mornings she called and did not know what to say. Some nights I answered and did not know how soft I could be. But we told the truth. That was a beginning. 3 months later, the Ruth Donnelly Foundation opened its first scholarship cycle, funded by restored money, new donors, and former students who wanted the funds separated from the Caldwell name. Its mission was simple: helping young people whose education had been blocked, delayed, or burdened by family control. I designed the logo myself, an open door. Beyond it, a horizon. Back in Portland, rain slid down my window while I finished the final files. Jenna sent a photo of Noah outside his school, holding the first application packet. Her message said, "For the first time, he knows the truth doesn't have to be scary." I looked at that boy's face for a long time. At 18, I thought love meant being chosen after I suffered quietly enough. I was wrong. Love does not ask one child to disappear so another can shine. Family is not a courtroom where the weakest person gets sentenced to protect the loudest name. Truth does not destroy a home. It only pulls the curtain off what was already rotting underneath. And sometimes, The person they call disloyal is simply the first one brave enough to stop the lie from reaching another generation. If this story touched you, please leave a like for the channel. And if you have any thoughts or advice, share them in the comments below. Tell us where you're listening from. We would love to know. Thank you for staying with Mara's story until the end. Wishing you health, peace, and strength. See you again in the next story on Revenge Glow.